In 1940, the world watched an entire army collapse in a matter of weeks. France, once considered Europe's strongest land power, fell in just 42 days. The lesson was brutal and unmistakable. Infantry alone could no longer decide wars. Speed, armor, and firepower now ruled the battlefield. The age of the tank had arrived, and the United States was dangerously unprepared. Across the Atlantic, American observers studied the wreckage left behind by German blitzkrieg tactics. Columns of Panzers punching through defenses, supported by mobile artillery and coordinated air power. And when U.S. planners looked at their own armored forces, what they saw was deeply alarming. America's best medium tank, the M2, was already obsolete. Thin armor, a small 37mm gun, a design better suited for parades than modern war. If the United States were dragged into this conflict, its tank crews would be outgunned, outranged, and outmatched. America needed a medium tank immediately, not next year, not after perfect testing, yesterday. What followed was one of the most desperate engineering compromises of the Second World War. The result was strange, awkward, tall, ungainly, a tank so ugly that its own crews mocked its appearance. And yet, in the burning sands of North Africa, this machine would become the first Allied tank capable of standing up to Rommel's feared Panzer divisions. This is the story of the M3 Lee and M3 Grant, the ugly American tank that didn't look like a winner, but arrived just in time to change the course of the Desert War. To understand why the M3 looked the way it did, you have to rewind to the panic of 1940. The U.S. Army knew it needed a 75mm gun, not just for fighting enemy tanks, but for firing high explosive shells that could smash anti-tank guns, bunkers, and infantry positions. The problem was painfully simple. American industry had never built a turret large enough to mount such a weapon. Designing a new turret would take years, tooling factories would take longer, and the war was happening now. So the Ordnance Department made a radical decision. They would mount the 75mm gun in the hull, fixed in a limited traverse sponson on the right side of the tank. On top, they would place a smaller turret carrying the existing 37mm gun. It was a design already considered outdated by many engineers, but it worked on paper, and more importantly, it could be built immediately. The result was the medium tank M3, standardized in 1941. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't refined, but it put a powerful gun on the battlefield faster than any alternative. The M3 soon split into two distinct identities. The American version, named the M3 Lee, featured a tall commander's cupola mounting a machine gun, giving the tank an almost absurd height. It required a crew of 7 men and looked like a steel tower crawling across the landscape. The British version, however, was different. Britain desperately needed tanks after the losses at Dunkirk and the relentless pressure of Rommel's Africa Corps. British designers replaced the American turret with a larger, lower-profile cast turret. They moved the radio into the turret, allowing the commander to control the fight directly. This version was named the M3 Grant. It was the Grant that would make history. In May 1942, the desert around Gazala burned under the North African sun. Rommel launched his offensive with confidence. British armored units, still relying heavily on Crusader and Matilda tanks, were outmatched. Their 2-pounder guns could punch armor but lacked high explosive shells. German Panzer III and IV tanks could do both. The balance favored the Germans. Then the Grants arrived. For the first time, British tank crews rolled into battle carrying a 75mm gun capable of destroying enemy armor at over 1,000 yards. German tankers were stunned. This wasn't another lightly armed British cruiser. This was something new. The M3's gun could knock out Panzers and obliterate anti-tank gun positions that had previously dominated the battlefield. The M3 Grant didn't win Gazala, but it stopped disaster. It slowed Rommel. It bought time, and that time would prove decisive. At El Alamein, the balance shifted. British forces, reinforced and reorganized, now had tanks that could finally meet German armor head-on. The M3 had evened the odds. But make no mistake, the M3 was deeply flawed. Its height made it impossible to hide. On flat desert terrain, it stood out like a lighthouse. The hull-mounted gun forced crews to rotate the entire tank to track moving targets. Its armor was riveted, meaning even non-penetrating hits could turn metal fasteners into deadly shrapnel inside the fighting compartment. Crews knew they were vulnerable. And yet, despite all this, the M3 kept fighting. In American hands, it spearheaded Operation Torch. In Soviet service, over 1,300 M3 Lees crossed the Atlantic under Lend-Lease. Soviet crews hated its silhouette and nicknamed it the Grave for Seven Brothers, but they respected its reliability, its radio equipment, and above all, its gun. In the Caucasus and around Kursk, the M3 fought on. It even served in the Pacific, where its high-explosive shells smashed Japanese bunkers hidden in jungle terrain. By 1943, the M3 was obsolete, replaced by the M4 Sherman, a tank shaped by the hard lessons learned from its ugly predecessor. The Sherman was lower, more balanced, and better suited for long-term war, but it would not have arrived in time without the M3. The M3 was never meant to be beautiful. It was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to exist. And sometimes, in war, existence is everything. For one critical year, this awkward American tank stood between defeat and survival. It gave the Allies firepower when they had none. It broke the myth of German tank invincibility, and it proved that industrial speed could matter more than perfect design. So the next time you see a photograph of the M3 Lee or Grant towering awkwardly over the desert sand, remember this. That ugly tank didn't win the war, but without it, the war might have been lost. What other overlooked machines do you think quietly changed the course of World War II? Let me know in the comments, and tell me which forgotten weapon you want explored next.